Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Joined by our great friend, Congressman Bob Barr, joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Good morning. Great to be with you all once again.
Why is it important to support law enforcement, sir?
It's important to support law enforcement because they protect our vital constitutionally guaranteed liberties, for heaven's sake. When people in some of these major cities disrespect law enforcement, throw water on them and so forth, what you're doing is you're basically cutting off your nose to spite your face. Law enforcement is there if they operate properly, as the vast majority do, within the bounds of the law and the Constitution. They are there to protect you and your property.
Well, and the idea of throwing water on them, I'm amazed, as you've referenced, sir, the amount of restraint it takes to be an effective law enforcement officer.
Yeah, with the assaults on law enforcement officers these days, whether it's the so-called Black Lives Movement that morphed into a very anti-law enforcement movement, or this new game of dousing law enforcement officers with water, it's the sort of thing that makes you wonder why men and women join up law enforcement. I'm glad they do, but it makes you wonder why anybody would, for the salaries that they get and the dangers into which they put themselves, why they would take on that challenge with the disrespect that so many people are showing them these days.
And Congressman Barr, what about the effect we've had during the Obama years on law enforcement and could have again if a Democrat is elected in 2020?
When you look at what some of these, probably pretty much all of the 21 or 22 Democratic presidential wannabes, the attitude that they're taking with regard to law enforcement, criticizing the ICE agents for simply enforcing our immigration laws that Congress passed, by the way, you really do have to fear for the way a Democratic administration, if the Democrat were to win in 2020, how they would treat law enforcement, particularly at the federal level, in beginning in 2021. We saw a taste of that under Obama, but with how far left the Democratic field has swung just in the last few years, you really have to worry about how they would treat law enforcement if they were to regain the White House.
Congressman Barr, you've been at the highest levels, whether it's in Congress, whether it's the impeachment trial, whether it's being on Crossfire, whether it's running for president. And then today we look at the lack of civility in the press today and the lack of civility with the Democratic candidates calling the president names. You've always, talked about, dissent, but respectful dissent. How detrimental is this to our republic?
It's terribly detrimental. When I was in the Congress, when I first was elected back in 1994, there was a period in which tempers were flared, tempers were frayed, because this was the first time in 40 years that the Republican Party had gained the majority in the House. But after a year and a half or so, things settled down, and we actually got things done. In the toxic environment in which Congress now operates, pretty much on both sides, but particularly on the Democratic side, it makes it virtually impossible to agree on anything and to get anything done. So the lack of civility and the lack of an ability to reach across the aisle is very detrimental to the country because things don't get done for the country, for the people of this great land of ours.
And again, when we have people just urging it on, as a member of the press back in the day, I still long for the days of Crossfire when it was about intellect as opposed to insults. The press seems to be they're urging these folks on. What can they say? That if you vote for Trump now, you're a white supremacist. You in Georgia, you face these racial issues your entire life. Your thoughts?
It's gotten far worse than I ever imagined it would when I was in the Congress. One example, Joe Scarborough, he was elected as a member of Congress when I was in 1994, and I think he served maybe 2 terms in the House and then went back to Florida. And he has become one of the most uncivil, rabid anti-Trumpers that one can imagine. I have no idea what happened to him because when he was in the Congress, he was reasonable. He was a conservative. but then he joins the media with his show down on MSNBC and is leading the fight for name-calling, incivility, and anti-government. It's very distressing that somebody, particularly who has been in the government, switches over to the media and leads that kind of charge.
And the impact it could have where we're almost inciting people to hate based on someone's politics. Again, it goes deeper than just words, doesn't it?
It does go deeper than words because when people see members of Congress, such as Maxine Waters, urging people to get in people's faces simply because you may disagree with them politically, and others on the Democratic side taking the same attitude, it really it sends a message to people who might be predisposed to incivility and even violence in the first place. It sends a message to them that it's okay to behave that way when they see leaders in Washington doing that.
Congressman Barr, your thoughts on the president and how he's reacted to these tragedies?
I'm not completely happy with how the president reacts to these circumstances and insults. I was heartened when the president, in the immediate aftermath of the tragic shootings in El Paso and Dayton, gave a speech to the media that was very civil, very toned down, very appropriate. But he needs to do more than that. As I wrote recently in a column last week, the president needs to follow that with a national speech, a primetime national speech, in which he takes the lead as president and denounces extremism in all of its ugly faces. And the Democrats need to do the same, but somehow I don't think that they will.
Congressman Barr, here on KIDO Talk Radio and all the other platforms that you've been on over the years, there's nobody more Second Amendment than you, the president, talking about red flag laws, background checks. You were there for the assault weapons ban. You're a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. Where are we going from here, and is this just more of the same?
I'm very concerned about where we're going from here. When the leadership of our country, both in the White House and many in the Congress, clamor for so-called red flag laws, which undercut not only the Second Amendment but the Fourth Amendment and the 14th Amendment as well. When you see sort of a knee-jerk response to let's make sure that every transfer of every firearm goes through the National Instant Check System. We need to maintain larger databases. I worry a great deal because this does serious harm and undercutting of important constitutionally guaranteed rights, such as the right to property, the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, and, of course, the right to keep and bear arms.
And yet that could be taken away. What do you make of Senator Harris that says that if she's elected, that she's going to give Congress, quote, 100 days to get their act together, and then she'll decide about confiscation, background checks, and an assault weapons ban without Congress?
We see these threats all the time. We saw it with Obama, and they're now turning from threats into action. This is very, very dangerous. It's one thing for Congress to pass a so-called assault weapon ban. It's one thing for Congress to pass a background check system. But it is something else entirely to circumvent that legislative process entirely and allow a president to abuse the powers of government to declare an emergency and issue executive orders or other documents and take away or diminish constitutionally guaranteed rights. This would be extremely dangerous.
Congressman Barr, what would you want to say, finally, we'll get you out on this one, to the family and friends and people of law enforcement? We'll let people know how you're supporting law enforcement in a minute, but your direct one-on-one message to those folks, sir.
Don't give up. Please don't give up. Maintain hope. Things hopefully will get better, but we need you out there despite the hardships that you face. I still think that the vast majority of the American people deeply appreciate what law enforcement is doing for them. I know I do.
And Congressman Barr, how can people help keep the dream alive of law enforcement? You travel the country supporting those folks. Tell us a little bit about how they can get in touch with you and what you're doing.
There are a number of organizations that are very supportive of law enforcement. I have the honor of heading one small group, the Law Enforcement Education Foundation, laweef.org. We support law enforcement through writings, through grants to law enforcement agencies for protective vests, for example. But we're certainly not the only one. I would urge people to seek out groups that bona fide groups that support law enforcement and donate to them.
Well, Congressman, we appreciate you. Again, we love having you on, and keep up the fight, sir.
Kevin, always a pleasure to be with you, and look forward to it again.
Yes, sir. Our great friend, Congressman Barr, joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The red flag laws continue. Congress, of course, taking a well-deserved or a recess. Maybe it's not so well-deserved. Two things we are talking about. The idea of the president saying, look, it's time to look into these things. Let's make a deal. How many of you are willing to make a deal when it comes to guns? Probably not many, right? Probably not many when we're thinking about, trust me, here's the line from the government, trust me, I'm lying.
Fox News has learned that Jeffrey Epstein was not checked on for several hours.
And we'll get back to Mr. Epstein. Again, we think, my personal opinion is they got him. Who? We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Poll after poll shows that overwhelmingly the American people want to expand background checks. They want to do away with the gun show loophole. They want to do away with the straw man provision. And more people agree with something that I have been saying for 30 years, is that assault weapons are weapons of war. They're military-style weapons designed to kill people as rapidly as possible. They should not be sold and distributed in this country.
Bernie, talking about taking guns. Doug in Mountain Home with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning. I used to think them kind of guys that he's an idiot. But who's the idiot? I think it's us, Kevin, letting them get away with doing this stuff. Last time I called, I told you I called into both senators in the White House and here because they're out of session. But people call them, flood them. I've seen it before on immigration when Larry Craig, that place got flooded. The White House got flooded with calls. They couldn't even take it all. Your voice matters. Kevin, who was that you just had on? Barr, he's from where, Georgia?
Yeah, he's retired. Bob Barr, a great conservative, a young man who did a lot for the country. And most folks today, Doug, don't even know who Bob Barr is. And I'm talking about the conservative pundits with their provocative clothing.
Yeah, I didn't know who he was. Anyway, I don't know what to say about this no more. I mean, if this president, that's what I told these senators, and I said it last time on, and I'll say it again. He's messing with freaking poison. He starts messing with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. If he thinks he's going to get some votes from Democrats by going their way, he's dumber than what I ever thought he was, because all they'll do is cut his throat and stab him in the back.
Well, remember what happened to the first President Bush. He wanted to be friends, and they got him.
Yeah. It's just, you can't be friends with them. They don't care. From what I've seen through life, they don't care about people's lives. They don't care about kids. They don't care about nothing, Kev. If they cared about kids, they'd do away with abortion. Period. They've killed more they've killed more of our precious kids by having abortion laws and letting them have them than any mass murderer has done. And mass murder is murder, no doubt. But all they're trying to do, and you know it, and hopefully these people trying to change their outlook of what's going on here, all they're trying to do is take away your freedom of being able to protect yourself against them. That's why they're trying to do away with law enforcement. It's why they hate them. They don't want enforcement against themselves. You see it.
I agree, Doug. Thank you for the call.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. Before we get to John and Sam, let's get you to traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio time, 8:23. Good morning, Dave. And back to your phone. Yo, thank you. And John in Middleton. John, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah, I had to go to Walmart about 10 minutes after that news of that shooting broke out to get my young son some diapers, and it was a very surreal experience walking through the Walmart on Garrity, where you set up shop regularly too. Just thinking it was one of these in another state that probably had a very similar layout that just someone walked through and shot it up. And thinking about not having the ability to defend yourself if something like that breaks out is just, I just couldn't imagine it. And just thinking about my wife and my child, they go to Walmart regularly, and just that somebody would go in there, zero mercy, and take them out. I mean, it just did something to me. It really hit me hard. And, I appreciate you asking Barr where he stands on these red flag laws. I think all the guys, the politicians you have on now, Kevin, I almost feel like we need to ask that question of them directly. Where do they stand? Because look at the way the left lies and falsely accuses at broad brushstrokes all conservatives, all Trump supporters, all Christians as terrorists, as inherently racist. They, and every other lie they can think of, they paint us with that. So who in their right mind could see these red flag laws ending well? It's going to end horribly. So we don't have control over everything in every state, but where we do have a voice and we do have some connection with the politicians, we need to make sure that they outright reject this concept in every form, because it's going to end horribly for law-abiding citizens like you, like me, the people who care about our communities, care about our families, who've done everything correctly and legally. They're going to falsely accuse us, guaranteed. So what do you feel, Kevin? You think the same way?
Oh, I think they want to outlaw us and get rid of us and replace us with the libs. They're doing that with the young people today. Where's the patriotism? There's a lot of young people that are patriotic, but we've got to continue to support them, continue to support everybody, because, you've got the people saying that we're extremists.
And it's never going to end. I mean,
No.
Good is evil, evil is good. And, and back to the law enforcement thing real quick, we do need to support our law enforcement. We need to make sure our law enforcement, though, also has the right priorities, because, there is a problem with gangs here. And it's very easy to not very easy. I'm not in law enforcement, but there's a problem with it. But it seems like there's a different set of priorities with the police departments here. Instead of going after these guys seriously and getting rid of them, many of them are here illegally. It just seems it's a little concerning, that's going on. So I do support the police too, and just hope that the guys at the top are really prioritizing things in a way that keep our communities actually safe.
Agreed. John, thank you for the call. You take care, brother.
God bless.
God bless.
Yep.
Sam in Caldwell with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you doing?
Hey, Sam.
Somebody needs to inform Bernie. This is what I called. I heard that blip from Bernie the Madman. Guns are designed to kill people. As a matter of fact, for his information, the Second Amendment was not put in there so that I could bird hunt. The Second Amendment was put in there so that the people like him in positions of authority would maintain a certain level of respect for the average Joe, because we're armed. And we weren't allowed to be armed because we wanted to hunt deer. Yes, they're designed to kill people, and yes, they should be sold in the United States, and everybody should have one, and he's an idiot. And they are doing they're not stupid. They know what they're doing. They want to get rid of those guns because, like a couple of the other callers, they do not want these laws enforced upon themselves. They're an elite group, and you and I are the hoi polloi. As far as red flag laws go, obviously, complete overreach. You're getting support for it. My children, none of my children went to the public school system. I've been telling people for decades, do not put your children in the public school system because they're warping their minds. And that's why you don't have patriotism. And you've got a couple of generations of people believing the sky is falling and that the United States is an evil empire and all kinds of stuff, and it's coming right through the public school system. And as far as your local law enforcement, guys, get to know your local law enforcement, because those are the guys who are that's your first line of defense. I'll tell you, we went through Montana on vacation here a week ago, and I was passed by a federal police enforcement vehicle. What in the heck is that? If that guy had tried to pull me over, and I assume he figured he had the authority to do it, I would not have stopped. He didn't have to get a sheriff or a local police officer there before I would even pull over for a clown like that. I have no idea who these people think they are. But you need to support your local law enforcement. You need to get to know your local law enforcement officers. They need to be your friends, man. And you need to support them and tell them, because if those guys start enforcing, they've sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, and your local law enforcement needs to step in between you and the feds when the feds try to overstep. But if you don't even know them, then they're just going to, you need to get to know them. These guys they live here locally too, and they're just people, and they're good people. And I run into a couple of them that are real nice people. Yeah, there's a jerk here and there. Big deal. They usually get weeded out. So yeah, support your local law enforcement and get to know them personally, and that's your first line of defense against these feds. So anyway, that's it. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up next, Dr. Ben Carson, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget the KIDO Talk Radio app. KIDO Talk Radio on 580 AM, 107.5 FM. We're joined now by the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. He's in Idaho today. Secretary Ben Carson joining us. Dr. Carson, welcome to Idaho.
Thank you. Glad to be back again.
Good to have you with us, sir. Before we get to your visit here, how important is it to have God in our lives?
I think it's essential. You have to have a foundation for your belief systems. And, as our society tries to discard God, you can see what's happening. It has to be substituted with something else, and that something else is generally not very good.
Dr. Carson, you're a man of immense intellect, of passion, of compassion, of faith. Does America need more prayer in our lives, considering the rhetoric going on about the violence that we've seen all over the country?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't even have to be very observant to see what is happening to us as we deteriorate, as we fall victim to the purveyors of hatred and division. And, Jesus said it himself, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And, our danger is not from China or Russia. Our danger is from ourselves.
Indeed. Dr. Ben Carson joining us. You're in Idaho with Senator Crapo. A big issue for people not only in Idaho but around the country, literally around the world, affordable housing.
It's a huge issue, but, one of the reasons that I'm coming here is to go through the Indy Dwell factory, which is in Caldwell, Idaho. They have some very innovative solutions for affordable housing. And we actually had a showcase of affordable housing on the National Mall in June. And innovation is not the problem in this country. Entrepreneurship is not the problem. The problem is we have so many regulations and a lot of NIMBYism that we're not able to utilize the tremendous intellect that we have in our country. And that's something that we're working on.
Dr. Carson, you're a product of the intellect in our country. Why is it important for kids listening right now to stay in school, to apply themselves, to become the best they can be like you?
Well, because, society is changing. There was a time when all you needed was a strong back and a willingness to work, and you could do just fine. That time is rapidly dissipating. Now you really have to have the wherewithal to be able to use the information. So, school now is a little bit different. It used to be memorize this table and memorize this group of things. Now is how do you access the information and then utilize it effectively?
Dr. Carson, many of us are fans of you and the president. Your thoughts on the president? You know him, you work with him, you competed against him. What's he like?
Well, he's actually a lot of fun. You should see him when he's not being attacked 24/7. A tremendous sense of humor. But one of the things that I admire about him is he has a real compassion for the people who've been neglected in our society. He talks about it all the time. And, how do we get these people out of poverty? These politicians have been promising them stuff for decades, and they get nowhere. And yet it's almost like they're mesmerized, and they think that these people now are finally going to do something for them. Nothing's changed. But here you have somebody who's not a politician who really wants to see our country succeed and recognizes what the dangers are if we continue down the pathway that we've been going for the last several years. And he wants people to understand that, this country has made mistakes. There's no question about that. And yet it's still a tremendous place. It's a place where people want to go. What other country has caravans forming to try to get into it? It wouldn't be the case if we were such a bad place. Doesn't mean we haven't done bad things, but it means that wise people learn from those things and they utilize them to improve further.
Well, Dr. Carson, our goal is to get the president here one day to Idaho. You've been here several times. You're here again. Could you put in a good word for us, sir?
I will definitely put in a good word for you. I used to come to Idaho every year to Sun Valley when I was on the board of Costco for 16 years. And it's a beautiful place with beautiful people.
Dr. Carson, God bless you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Take care.
There we have it. Dr. Ben Carson joining us here on KIDO Talk Radio. He's going to put in a good word for us with the president. We sure appreciate that. We still would love, we want the president. We urge the president to come here to Idaho to check out America, right? Pro-Life joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Pro.
Hello. I like Dr. Carson. I think he'd have been a good president. But anyway, when you talk about red flag laws, we do have ways of taking guns away from people, and nobody ever uses it. It's the common law jury system. Say if somebody really was dangerous with a gun and hadn't committed a crime, there could be a grand jury. The grand jury could ask the courts and the law enforcement to do something about it. Then in an open court with a jury of 12 people, then a person could have their gun taken away. And
well, that would take time. So you're saying you do this instead of the red flag laws?
Yeah, of course. And the jury would be made up of people that really knew a jury of your peers. Isn't that what the Constitution says?
Well, wouldn't that defeat the purpose of the red flag laws, because they say that you've got to get there quickly because people are nuts. By the way, sidebar, everybody, I do want to thank Senator Crapo for bringing in Dr. Carson, Secretary of HUD, Secretary Carson here today. That's a big honor for us in Caldwell, in Boise. So props to Senator Crapo for making that happen. Back to you, Pro-Life.
Yeah, I know. An individual can go over and steal these guns. I mean, if I had a relative, a neighbor, a close associate, I might, and I really thought that he was going to harm somebody, do something wrong, I could just go over at night, when he was sleeping, take his guns.
Well,
and then,
let's be honest. And
yeah, let's be honest.
Let's have uncensored opinion here. The Democrats don't care about us, the ones that want our guns. They just want to get elected. I mean, you talk about the crazy, wacky, zany, loony left, and I heard Sean talking about this movie called The Hunt, which was canceled by Universal Pictures, which was basically open season on conservatives, where the liberals would hunt with guns, killing conservatives. Now, you tell me, those are the type of people that you're going to trust with your guns, with your family, with your political thought?
No, of course not. Here's the big problem. You can go to the political science, the international relations professors, almost all the teachers in the United States, and they're telling the children that the United Nations is the solution to world peace. And then, of course, the United Nations says that individuals should not have guns, only the military and the police. And so we have a world government mindset And so, of course, if you're going to be in the UN and honor the UN, your nation has to get in line with that. And so all of these Democrats, they're honoring that. They don't say that, but they've been brainwashed that way. And most of the voters have been brainwashed that way. So the Second Amendment doesn't mean anything to those kind of people. And they don't realize that we could have a one-world totalitarian, socialist, communist government. And that's where it's headed if we go for red flag laws and all of this stuff. What do you think about that?
Red flag laws are not going to stop the killer at the door.
No. The killer at the door, if you take his guns away, he'll go somewhere else and steal a gun and go do what he's going to do.
Exactly. Pro-life, thank you for the call. By the way, back to this movie, The Hunt. After lots of backlash following the tragic shootings in Ohio and Texas, Universal Pictures has decided to pull the film The Hunt. The movie, which was set about rich people hunting poor people for sport, was going to be released next month. By the way, it was liberal people hunting conservative people for sport. For now, the movie will be put on the shelf until a more appropriate time for the release is found. Come on. You know, when we hear the symphony and the skepticism coming from D.C., let's face it. Let's just call it for what it is, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO, would you trust any of these leftovers with your guns?
We've got Republican senators publicly saying, therefore, some type of background check. Lindsey Graham and Dick Blumenthal of Connecticut have these red flag laws. We have to take a look at what the final product is.
We're going to be monitoring and are monitoring social media to pick up these things when we see keywords that indicate that person is simply going to be a menace.
Mass shootings happen almost with a regularity where it's happening every day. I think this is the time to lead and take responsibility, to be a lot bolder than just small steps towards safety and security.
We know that mass shootings happen primarily in the United States, at least at this level. There's mental illness in other countries. There's video games in other countries. How do we take some modest steps to start getting these guns out of the hands of people? It's not just the mass shootings, it's the day-to-day killings.
And there we have it. Never let a tragedy go to waste. Kurt in Boise, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Kurt.
Well, good morning, Kevin. Yeah, I'd like to comment on some of this stuff. This is just crazy. I read an article the other day, and it was talking about how Joe McCarthy was a nut, right? So he thought he saw communists everywhere, and there were some. There's no doubt about it. But now they're saying that the conservatives are turning back to McCarthyism because the liberals are right and the conservatives are wrong. So I think it's crazy that they've turned it all around again, just like going to the red flag laws and taking the assault weapons and everything else. They're upside down.
Oh, I totally agree. We're on the outs and they're on the in, and they have the high ground right now. Right.
So we got to, just the other day, it was so funny because you were talking about Idaho's Second Amendment Association. I can't remember what it is.
Oh, Idaho Second Amendment Alliance with Greg Pruitt and Seth, yes.
Right. So I looked them up on the computer after learning more about them from your show, and I joined because, you know what, those are the kind of organizations that we need to join, that we can have a bigger group and get better informed and more educated. So when they come in here and try to take these laws, change the laws, we have a group that we can stand up for. I mean, that's what they're doing with the FATA, right? That's what they're doing with the socialists. They're getting, Maxine Waters wants their people to go and protest in front of Mitch McConnell's house or other people's house. Well, we have to form some kind of alliance, if you will, and be able to be prepared for these people because they're already on the move. I mean, the Democrats have been chasing the Republicans around for years, and so we need to group up and be prepared for this stuff.
And not be afraid to stick up for ourselves.
Exactly, and have to know what the laws are and know how to go about it peacefully, not wearing a mask, not throwing water, not throwing concrete in coffee cups like these guys are doing, but stand up and be able to verbalize and actually know what we're talking about. So when they come at us, we can have the facts and the figures that so many people on your show talk about, you know. And I think that's a great way about doing it.
Agreed. Kurt, thank you for listening. We appreciate you supporting KIDO Talk Radio.
You bet, bud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a nice young man. More of your thoughts next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Do want to thank Dr. Carson for joining us, and big ups to Senator Crapo and his office for bringing people together to see what's going on in Idaho. And our goal each and every morning is to make our Treasure Valley the best that it can be. And, of course, an armed Treasure Valley is a safe Treasure Valley. Hopefully we can spread that message through Ada and Canyon counties to our friends in Mountain Home, to Ontario, Oregon, and to others throughout our area. You know, the scary part about this is that you hear the Democrats, and they're saying now is the time to strike. Now there is an opportunity. You know, what do we warn people against? Acting with emotion. Acting in haste. What do you tell your kids, your grandkids, your students, your players, when you're a good parent or coach or what have you, right? Don't react emotionally. Don't react at the spur of the moment. Take a moment. It's kind of like the email test, right? You know what I'm saying. All of a sudden, somebody at work, somebody at home, somebody at work, they send you something unacceptable. They send you something stupid, right? So what do we do? Well, I don't think I could do that again if I tried. I'm going to show you. And then you fire it back. And it escalates the situation. Whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're wherever, what is the key to getting along in life? De-escalation of things, right? You have people cutting people off in traffic, acting irresponsibly. Do we respond to that? Hopefully we're the better people, right? Hopefully we're the really better people at this. By the way, props to local law enforcement. When we're talking about something that happened recently, where you have a man with a gun was taken into custody at the Walmart off Overland Road Sunday afternoon. No shots were fired. Nobody was injured. Meridian police are investigating this. The man identity has not been released and charges have not been filed, according to Meridian Police Department. But again, is it against the law to take a gun into a store? Maybe in light of what happened with the Walmart, you aren't allowed to do this, but this is off Overland, which is interesting because I believe that Walmart is in Boise. Actually, I was there Sunday morning. Traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning. There was something over the weekend called the Pan Am Games. You ever heard of that? Back in the day, it used to be something. Well, the Pan Am Games were a big deal. I think the last big Pan Am Games were, in 1987. And basically, it's up and down the continent of America, right? So here's something strange. We had an Olympic fencer, we won't even mention his name, took the gold medal at the Pan Am Games, but he might be in trouble after taking the knee while on the podium during the medal ceremony. So this jabroni fencer went to Twitter saying, "We must call for change." That he's proud of his team's win. "My pride has been cut short by the multiple shortcomings of the country, including racism, gun control, mistreatment of immigrants. I encourage others to use your platforms for empowerment and change." Man, so you spent your whole life to win a gold medal, and you use that to try and get yourself over. Talk radio can make a change. Now, the critics will say, you do is complain. No, we have helped people change laws. We have changed political parties. We've elected people. We've unelected people. There is great power in the community right here. But if there's one thing that we can pledge, what is wrong with people that continue to rip down the United States of America. Look, this guy taking a knee is not going to impact racism, gun control, mistreatment of immigrants, or anything else. What was this guy thinking? Well, he can get on maybe some of the shows. And look, Timmy the Fencer is making a difference because he took a knee. All he's doing is disrespecting the country that has allowed him the greatest freedom in world history that has been ever known to man and woman and little doggies and little cats, right? What was this guy thinking? I'm going to show them. We'll probably see him at a new Democratic fundraiser with Crazy Bernie or Mayor Pete or whomever else. Folks, as we have the privilege, we don't know how long we'll be here. Each and every morning, every day is a blessing. We must continue to share our beliefs that America is the greatest country on God's green earth, right? Because the children, the grandchildren, the future is dependent on us, not cowering, not raising our flags, not being proud of this great country. That's where we are. But I mean, come on. And then again, when would anybody ever mention fencing unless this guy made a mockery of himself? We're not making a mockery, and you're not taking our guns. Ray and Maya, great job. Jared, looking good. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Glenn Beck is next on your home for Fox News, Sean Hannity, Kevin Miller, and you. KIDO Talk Radio. God bless.